All right, let's dive in from the top, but this time I'll steer clear of you ever and just drop you right into the thick of things like a memory vivid and raw. The air was heavy, full of stale coffee and something worse fear. There I was packed in with 46 of my neighbors crammed shoulder to shoulder into a meeting room clearly built for maybe half that many. Overhead, the fluorescent lights buzzed like angry hornets, a relentless soundtrack for the disaster about to unfold. And right up front stood Karen Sterling with a smile so cold it could freeze a bonfire, yelling at me to sit down and pay my fines. Nobody in that room, not even Karen herself, realized she was just minutes away from stumbling straight into the teeth of federal justice. The woman was cocky, certain she could strip me of my home, my peace, with a pile of trumped-up violations totaling close to $5,000. All dreamed up while I was 200 meters away, holding my mother's hand in her final moments. What Karen didn't know, what she couldn't even begin to guess as I sat there with my grief hanging heavy on my shoulders, was that I wasn't just another heartbroken widow. I was Judge Evelyn Vance, United States District Court. And I'd spent 2 decades putting away people a whole lot cleverer than her. But let's roll things back for a second, because you don't get an explosion without a long fuse. The story really started when I bought my plain old brick house in Oakwood Enclave, a quiet little suburb in Fairfax, Virginia. My idea was simple: find an escape from the black robes, the endless legal wrangling, the constant parade of people arguing over the difference between legal and right. I wanted to be just Evelyn for once, the lady who waved from the porch and grumbled about humidity, not Your Honor. For 3 years I managed to fly under the radar, blending in with retirees and young families. Around here, the most exciting thing that happened was someone forgetting to bring in their trash can. That easy, invisible life lasted until last spring. Everything changed with one phone call, the kind that tells you your time as a daughter is up. I packed a bag, lined up Greenleaf landscaping board, approved of course to handle the yard, and drove north to Baltimore. For weeks my days were a slow fade of antiseptic and sorrow, watching the strongest woman I knew slip away. The day after the funeral I came home, eyes raw and puffy, my world feeling hollow. My house had that abandoned, musty smell, and right at my front door was a mountain of certified letters, all stamped final notice. The HOA had delivered what could only be called a cruel homecoming. My hands shook, grief, anger, disbelief, all tangled together as I tore open envelope after envelope. Violations for everything: grass too tall by half-an-inch mailbox, painted the wrong shade of green, an unauthorized landscaping job, all dated during the weeks I was away clinging to what little family I had left. It was like being accused of neglect at the exact moment I was fighting just to keep myself together. At the bottom of the stack was Karen's signature, big, bold, and merciless. 10 days to pay almost $5,000 or they'd start foreclosure. The threat felt like a slap. I called her hoping for just a little decency. Her answer: rules are rules. Ms. Vance, she cooed, her voice fake sweet, full of that condescending pity bullies love. Grief is sad, of course, but it doesn't excuse property neglect. If you can't keep up with a home, maybe an assisted living facility would suit you better. That did it. That's the moment my grief hardened into something cold and sharp. I hung up dry-eyed and started working. I took aimless walks around the neighborhood, but really I was scouting, making notes. That's when I started seeing the pattern. 3 other homes had for sale signs and violation letters, all recently sold for way less than market value to a company called Sterling Foundations, LLC. Surprise, surprise, the same last name as our HOA president. Public records, sloppy paperwork, the same typos, and spacing she hadn't even bothered to cover her tracks. Every house targeted belonged to someone elderly, grieving, or otherwise vulnerable. But the real gut punch was seeing Karen's silver Mercedes parked at Mrs. Higgins' place 3 doors down, an old woman sobbing Karen towering over her. That's when it clicked. This wasn't about rules. This was a business model, predatory, heartless, designed to bleed people dry. A couple days later, an emergency meeting notice hit my mailbox. Never mind that it broke HOA bylaws. It was a setup, a public shaming. I walked into the stuffy community center, peeling paint dead air, Karen on her throne at a folding table, flanked by her nephew Braden, clipboard in hand, bored out of his skull. Karen ran a PowerPoint flashing photos of my house and yard. My hand tightened on the binder stuffed with evidence. When I tried to speak, Karen cut me off. "This isn't a courtroom, Miss Vance. No theatrics, please. The board's already moved to file liens. As if she owned the place. I pulled out my phone, calmly announced I was recording just as Virginia law allows. You're admitting to liens filed without due process for violations dated while I was out of state, I said. She faltered, but then hammered her gavel and shut it all down. Leaving the room, I got a tap on the shoulder. Sergeant Major Rhett Miller, a veteran whose eyes missed nothing. He pressed a folded note into my hand and whispered, "You're not the first, ma'am. Won't be the last." In my car, I opened it, a list of addresses, violation dates, low sale prices. It wasn't just me. Karen's game had been running for years. That kicked off a week of outright war. Every morning, Karen's Mercedes arrived at Don Braden in tow with his camera and tape measure hunting for infractions. They measured the distance from my car's tires to the curb, snapped pictures of imaginary weeds, cited me for having a porch light too yellow. Greenleaf Landscaping dropped me saying Karen threatened to blacklist them. My pool key stopped working, some system glitch that magically affected only me. It was harassment, pure and simple. Her plan was to make my life so miserable, I'd beg her to buy my house. She made a huge mistake. I took leave from work, but not to grieve. I went into full investigation mode, combing through the courthouse archives, connecting dots. 23 homes in our community lost to foreclosure or fire sale in 5 years, with over $2 million in lost equity, all routed to Sterling family shell companies. I linked up with Sarah Jenkins, an accountant who got fined for her kid's tricycle, and she introduced me to Marcus Thorne, a local attorney who'd been trying to build a case but didn't have the last piece. In Marcus's office, surrounded by chaos and case files, I finally dropped my guard. "I'm Judge Evelyn Vance, U.S. District Court," I told him. The look on his face, shocked then steel, told me he got it. "This is bigger than fines," I explained. "Mail fraud, wire fraud, fair housing violations, RICO. But we needed something more." Then came the twist of fate. Buried in the county records, I found the original 1994 Articles of Incorporation for Oakwood Enclave, with a clause that let homeowners immediately dissolve the board if 25% signed a petition for financial misconduct. That was our ace. What finally lit the powder keg? Overhearing Karen in the parking garage. Phone pressed to her ear, not knowing I was nearby. "We need to step up the pressure on Vance. My financing's about to run out. I need that corner lot for my project. I don't care if you have to fake signatures, get it done." It wasn't about the rules, it was about her pocket. At home, I turned my dining room into a command center. With Miller, Sarah, Marcus, and a handful of others, we rallied the neighborhood. Miller worked quietly gathering signatures, 37 families in. All we needed was 45. Sensing the tide turning, Karen did something desperate, called for a surprise special assessment, demanding $500 from every household for phony repairs. She thought she was robbing us one last time. Really, she was digging her own grave. She didn't know Mrs. Higgins, her longtime victim, had decided to help us. Our star witness. The meeting that night was electric. 50 people packed in, fanning themselves with violation letters. Karen looked nervous. Her cousin, the deputy at her side, obviously regretting it. Karen banged her gavel, ranted about threats and stalking, tried to get her cousin to write me up on the spot. The deputy clutched a folder of fake complaints, sweating bullets. But then something changed. Mrs. Higgins stood up, shaky but fierce. "Stop it, Karen. I won't do it anymore." She spoke out loud and clear. She'd signed whatever Karen wanted, scared for her home. It was all lies. All of it. Karen snapped, shouting about senility. But the room was already shifting, neighbors turning to each other, realizing the truth. I walked to the front and looked the deputy in the eye. "Officer, you're about to become accessory to a federal racketeering case." His face went white. Karen laughed, shrill and desperate. "Who do you think you are? Just a bitter old woman with a dead lawn." I took out my badge, flipped it open. "My name is Patricia Evelyn Vance, Senior Judge, United States District Court. And for the last 6 months, I've documented a criminal enterprise in this HOA." Silence, then a murmur as people realized what was happening. The deputy took a careful step away from Karen. I laid out the evidence, audio, forensics, the petition, the original bylaws. As of now, this board is dissolved. Karen lunged for the microphone, screaming, but I'd already dialed Special Agent Reynolds. "This is Judge Vance. Execute the warrant." The door swung open. FBI agents came in, calm, silent, terrifyingly professional. Karen Braden and the rest in cuffs. The whole neighborhood watching some filming, nobody looking away. Justice finally arrived. Karen pleaded out, took 8 years in prison. Her company was liquidated, money returned to those she stole from. I donated my settlement to a scholarship in my mother's name. The neighborhood healed, laughter and real community finally coming back. 6 months on, standing in my yard, kids playing garden blooming, I realized something. Law only matters when people demand it work for everyone. Power without oversight, just another brand of tyranny. And here's the thing that keeps me awake. If systems like this thrive on our silence, do we owe it to ourselves and each other to question authority? Or does all this suspicion just tear us apart? So what would you have done? I'd love to hear your take. Drop a comment, tell your own story. Let's talk about justice, power, and what's truly right. And if you found any of this worth your time, share it with a friend. Sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one holding the gavel.